Kol omer kra, va'omar ma'ekra. A voice says, cry out. And I say, what shall I cry when all flesh is grass and all its beauty is like the flower of the field? The grass dies, the flower fades when a wind of Adonai blows upon them. Surely the people are grass, the wind blows. The flower fades, but the word of Adonai endures forever. And we, created by the word of God, have an aspect of eternity within us. The time of mourning is a complicated one, filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. Our service unfolds with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Peppy's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagur be'ohalecha mi yishkon behar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo, lo ragal al lishono, lo asa l're'ehu ra'a v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo, nivzeh beinav nimas v'et yirei Adonai yichabed, nishba lahara v'lo yamir, kaspo lo natan b'neshech v'shochad al naki lo lakach, ose ele lo yimot lo olam. A psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Honor those who revere Adonai. Never retract the promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Make these deeds your own. Then shall you stand firm forever. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, a psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Binod deshe yarbitzeni, giving me repose in green meadows. Almei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit. Yancheni v'magle tzedek lama'an shemo, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Gam ki elech begates al mavet, though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, lo irara ki ata imadi, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Shiftecha umishantecha hema yinachamuni, your staff and your rod comfort me. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai, you prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. Dishanta v'Hashem roshi kosi rivaya, you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life. V'shafti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Chavirim, this moment is about letting go. It is about letting go even as we might desperately try to hold on. We hold on with a fierceness that seeks to deny the reality of our loss. But we gather to acknowledge that this is a moment about letting go, about leaving a part of our past behind us. We acknowledge that physically Peppy is gone from our midst. But at the same time, we assert and affirm that Peppy's legacy is something that all can hold on to. The past travels with us. Those who are important in our lives never truly leave us. They accompany us always with their strength and with their love. One of Peppy's favorite piyutim from the Machzor, from the High Holy Day literature, is one that is sung on Kol Nidre. It is entitled Ki Hine Kachomer, Behold as the clay. And it was something she desired for this moment. Behold as the clay in the hand of the potter, who expands or contracts it at will, so are we in your hand, O God of love. Look to the covenant, overlook our sin. Behold as the stone in the hand of the mason, who hews or fragments it at will, so are we in your hand, O God of life. Look to the covenant, overlook our sin. Behold as the iron in the hand of the blacksmith, who forges or rejects it at will, so are we in your hand, O God, who sustains the poor. Look to the covenant, overlook our sin. Behold as the anchor in the hand of the sailor, who weighs or casts it at will, so are we in your hand, O God, and good and forgiving God. Look to the covenant, overlook our sin. Behold as the glass in the hand of the glazier, who shapes or melts it at will, so are we in your hand, O gracious God. Look to the covenant, overlook our sin. Behold as the cloth in the hand of the weaver, who drapes or twists it at will, so are we in your hand, O gracious God. Look to the covenant and overlook our sin. Behold as the silver in the hand of the silversmith, who alloys it or refines it at will, so are we in your hand, O healing God. Look to the covenant, overlook our sin. I think part of why this piyut resonated with Peppy is because it spoke of malleability, flexibility, the ability to adapt to new situations, to change, and to grow, to meet the needs of the moment, to trust in God for that which is beyond us, and to try, like the worksmiths in the piyut, to fashion the best version of ourselves and of our lives. To reflect that in Peppy's life and to reflect on her life, I'm going to call her children and their spouses to the bima, and each of them will have an opportunity to share some of their thoughts and reflections.
Good morning. On behalf of our family, I'd like to thank all of you for being here to accompany us today. The last couple of years have been taxing for us, as my mom slipped further away from us in mind and then eventually in body, until she's now at peace. Peppy Sanders was just so full of life and just such a wonderful woman that there are lots of different stories and descriptions that we could each offer to try and capture her in the brief time here. She was a great wife, a super mom, a loving and loyal daughter and sister, an embracing mother-in-law, a loving, interested, and so very sweet grandmother, a pillar of the Jewish community and a true Eshet Chayil. There is just so much that I could say to try to do justice to Peril, but I'll limit myself to one area that, for me, might have made her a little different and most special to me, and maybe to some of you. April 23rd, 1946, was a very special day in Brooklyn, New York. At Ebbets Field that day, Ed Head, the starting pitcher for the Brooklyn Dodgers, threw a no-hitter against the Boston Braves. What was especially noteworthy was the fact that Ed Head, a right-handed pitcher, was able to throw that masterpiece in spite of the fact that he was originally a left-handed pitcher who was involved in a terrible car crash as a 15-year-old in which he nearly had to have his prized left arm amputated. He recovered and learned to pitch right-handed, eventually made his way to the major leagues, and had modest success, punctuated by that one brilliant day in April 1946. Also, on that April day, Shlomi Mintzer brought his 14-year-old cousin Peppy to her first baseball game. A budding love for baseball was consummated. To truly appreciate Pearl, you had to understand that at her core, she was always that 14-year-old girl attending her first ball game. Her love of baseball was pure, innocent, and profound. While other teenage girls in the post-war period were swooning over Sinatra, she was assembling a scrapbook of her Brooklyn Dodgers. Her idea of a magical moment was watching her Jackie Robinson dance down that third base line, intimidating a pitcher until he made that majestic, mad dash for the plate. 2 years ago, I gave myself a special birthday gift. I took Pearl out to Cooperstown, not her first time there, to the Hall of Fame. Even though she'd already been diminished by Alzheimer's, she hustled up to the ticket booth and excitingly regaled the ticket agent, telling him, "I used to see Jackie Robinson play at Ebbets Field. He was the greatest." I truly believe that much of her liberal political views could be traced to her love of Jackie and all that he represented for this country. Like many old Dodger fans, she was devastated by their move to Los Angeles, but she quickly transferred her loyalties to the New York Mets. As young kids, Pearl taught us to love baseball and to respect the game. She had a few rules that were ironclad. Always keep a scorecard at the game, which she dutifully taught us to do. Never leave before the final out. And whatever loyalty you settle on, never root for the Yankees. She could be a disciplinarian with us as kids, but we never had to worry if she caught us listening to a transistor radio under our pillow at night as long as it was tuned to a ball game. She would often settle in next to us and listen as well. Going to school and completing all our schoolwork was paramount to her, unless an exception had to be made to skip school to go to the final game of the 1969 World Series with her. Maybe the coolest moment of my life. Going to a game with Pearl was a window into that 14-year-old girl. Even into her 80s, her walking pace would quicken as soon as we got out of the car in the parking lot and approached the gate to the ballpark. The requisite purchase of the scorecard came next, then filling out the lineup as she prepared for her game. She was free in such a young, innocent way as she yelled, clapped, complained, opined, and just enjoyed. Anyone who ever went to a game with her was elevated in their appreciation of the day. That 14-year-old teen glow was infectious. She never lost that. Away from the park, watching the games as we all did was always a reason to reach out and just talk. We would call her at critical moments during a broadcast just to get her feedback. A game wasn't really over until you had that post-game call with her to rehash what we'd just seen. And it was multi-generational. She would speak to her brothers Milt and Charlie, to me, to my brothers, and often to her grandchildren. We all understood where our passion originated. Last year, my son Jeremy received a pennant-winning ring from Tampa Bay. He intended that that ring would go to Pep, but sadly, she had reached a point where she couldn't really enjoy it. He did get to put it on her finger, though. Everyone wanted to speak to our oracle. Neighbors remember that happy lady sitting on her front porch with the radio tuned to the broadcast, enjoying the summer evenings. Again, it was that 14-year-old girl just caught up in the moment. I will miss our Pearl dearly and will always feel so lucky to have had her for my mom. I'm not sure if I will ever miss her more, knowing that she won't be there to put that coda on all of the games I will still see because of the DNA that she put in me. And it was still there right up to the end. Several days ago, I was talking to her, trying to get her to connect. I told her that Gil Hodges had finally made the Hall of Fame. She managed a little smile, and the final two words to me were, Gil Hodges. Pearl, you'll always be that 14-year-old girl at Ebbets Field on that April day.
Good morning. I'll give it a shot. I said to Peppy, whoa, this is tough. I said to Peppy I would try my best to honor her request of speaking at her funeral, and did share these words with her when she and Heshi moved out of Tampa Avenue. I wanted to thank her for giving me so much. Then we shed a few tears and hugged a bit. This is what I told her. What can I tell you? I'm so lucky. Peppy, such a special part of my life. I came to this country not in pursuit of a dream, but to continue the sweet journey with Michurro here, the love of my life. It wasn't easy for Peppy. Her first son had fallen in love with a non-Jew. Nevertheless, she not only accepted me, but supported me and guided me. We bonded. It was the greatest welcoming an immigrant could have. By the way, speaking of immigrants, Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday. Churro and I, once we settled back in the US, decided that in our family, that was our holiday to host, always filled with gratitude for the way everyone, Heshi, Bubbles, Linda, Dice, and the whole family held me close, following Peppy's lead. From the beginning and throughout the years, Peppy gave me a spot in her heart at her home and one in her heart. I always had her love and attention. With her example, she was my Jewish mom and homemaker role model. She shared with me her yummy recipes, taught me how to make latkes, apple cake, fricassee. We both love chicken feet. Made me love the celebrations at home, Shabbat, the high holidays, and all the rest, and told me how to prepare a seder for about 40 people, 2 nights in a row. We talked about everything and often found ourselves agreeing, laughing, embracing. She was most welcoming to my family as well. Everyone who came to visit, everyone she met, and even those that she only saw through the digital screens or through me. With my mom, they communicated with a few practice words in either Spanish or English and through translation, but mostly through their shared moments and their warm smiles. Those said it all. Peppy was most welcoming to my sister Lucia. She was home to her. Mujita, as Michurro named her, was always lucky to be able to count on her when she lived here in Albany, always a recipient of her love, as were Danny and Drew. I know I speak for them when I say that they are forever thankful to Peppy and will always remember her with love. Peppy, as you know, traveled with Hesh all over the world, and some of those trips were to visit us and their grandchildren. Josh and Jeremy, in spite of growing up in other latitudes, always felt close and had Bobo Peppy and Bobo Hesh's love. She absolutely adored her grandchildren. My boys were thrilled to come back to Albany in the summertime to spend time with them, go to the park and the lake, visit family, and go to camp. They learned to love baseball from her passion and enjoyed watching the ball games with Grandma. Quinn and Mackenzie were so lucky to have met their Gigi, have seen her smile, and felt her love. This story, you can be sure, is the same in similar versions with the rest of the family. How lucky we all are to have had Peppy in our lives. Peppy, thank you again for your warm welcome. We'll miss you. I will miss you. But you will always be in my heart. And I can only pray I can give to others all that you gave me. De corazón, Peppy. Gracias.
Chata, thanks for warming up the crowd. It's okay. Before I begin, I just want to tell my brothers and sister, who sometimes would protest that I was my mother's favorite, that was never true. She just realized that I needed just a little more help than them. What more could anyone ask for of or cherish in a mom? We all stand here filled with grief, but fulfilled with decades of the warmest and funniest memories of our remarkable mother, Pearl Peppy Peril Sanders. The surest way to reclaim and restore her exceptional memory that had faded over the past 3 years is to share our favorite memories today. The retelling is restorative and helps us all mend our broken hearts. The Greatest Generation is most often a reference to our father's world and a reflection of battles won in wars, the fulfillment of the American dream against all the odds of the Great Depression, and all that went on to prepare us for our comfortable lives. But our mothers, who raised our families, supported and spawned their own careers, and worked tirelessly to ensure that their extended families were enriched with overwhelming holiday events that no one will ever forget. Our Peppy deserves that Greatest Generation appellation as much as anyone. Having 4 children over 8 years with a workaholic but loving husband was a common experience for many of our mothers from the late 1950s through the next couple of decades. But the burden of raising all of us kids was squarely on the shoulders of all of our young moms. No TV sitcom could really portray what kind of devotion and support we all needed, especially as the winds were changing pretty quickly for all of us. Peppy was always a modern woman, an au courant mother, and a remarkable acceptance of many of the new freedoms, even extended to our teenage friends. She was just fine with having our home serve as a magnet and safe haven for years. She'd always say, it's better that whatever you're doing, you do it downstairs in the basement, not out driving. She had to convince my dad that our basement was indeed not an opium den. And after me and my friends emerged from those teenage years and young adult years, she and my dad entrusted our pal Ron Kay to guide them through China for a couple of weeks. No one saw that coming back in 1975. But there were times when my mom did not leave me completely free range. One particular night, actually it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, I can still see Peppy in the middle of the winter with a car coat over her nightgown and in winter boots, peering into one of the big glass windows of the Gateway Diner, searching for me. And my adult friends all chiming in, "Isn't that your mom out there?" My mother was a woman of deep faith with an unwavering devotion to her country, its democratic and civic principles, her religion, and all that went along with it, with traditions, to Israel, from a dream until today, and more than anything else, her Albany Jewish community. And how can anyone question her unbroken and long-suffering faith and devotion to her Brooklyn Dodgers and New York Mets? But I do have to share a story about blind faith, which is defined as one's belief without true understanding, perception, or discrimination. Many here have heard this story before, but I ask your indulgence as retelling it gives me comfort today. It is her purest example of her faith, but it was blind faith that she had in the potential of some universal, interconnected Jewish community to come to our aid wherever we may find ourselves. It's the summer of 1979, and I was all excited about a one-month summer internship while I was a community nutrition major at Cornell. The position was promoted as an opportunity to counsel pregnant women who were sojourning through rural Wisconsin along with their migrant farm working families. Idealistically, I took that bait, for I thought it would be an opportunity to get some real life experience during my rocky road through college. Promises were made about my ability to secure a month of housing and the expectations about my role in a women, infants, and children, or WIC clinic in the idyllic sounding town of Wild Rose, Wisconsin. Many here probably don't know where that is, but if you imagine a big map of nowhere, it was right in the middle of that. Suffice it to say, there was no housing. 2 nights in a campground, 1 night on the floor in a barn with some other Vista volunteers, and the job was an even bigger bust. In fact, they put me to work filing index cards in the clinic, as any chance that I could ever counsel women in Spanish was way beyond my language ability. Kind of wish they made that absolute requirement known on the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that I saw hung up back at school and during my quickie interview. Suffice it to say, I was done with both my internship and Wild Rose, Wisconsin in about 5 days. My phone call home to my mom is epic. I called her collect from a payphone and told her that the first couple days have been terrible. I have no place to stay. I just quit this morning. I'm coming on home. My mom didn't like people quitting. She tried to convince me to stay. I told her it's not going to happen. She said, "There's no place you can stay." I said, "There's no place I can stay. Nobody there to help you. No one here to help me, Mom." And then she said to me, "There must be some Jewish merchants in town. A hardware store, a jewelry store, a furniture store, someone there to help you." And I don't know if I did drop the receiver, but I said, "Mom, I'm on the only phone, on the only side of the only street here in this town of 700 people. There is no jewelry store. There's no haberdashery. There's no furniture store. And she paused and said, what? I said, okay, listen. I was just down at the Wild Rose JCC this morning, Pep, and I was in the Schwitz with a couple of guys, one of whom has a daughter, and she says to me, you don't have to be so wise. And I said, well, I'm leaving, and just so you know, the Cubs are playing home today at Wrigley Field, and I'm going to stop in Chicago and watch a game on my drive home, and that seemed to just make it all better. I have to share one more thing with you, just as it reanimates my mom, our Peppy, so that through our grief we can hear her words and see her smile. It's a letter she wrote to me when I was a junior in college, my second time I was a junior in college. Dear Alan, I just spoke to Elsie Dorson. She called me with the name and address of that girl I mentioned to you on Sunday. She spoke to the girl's mother and mentioned you, and when the girl called home on Sunday, the mother spoke to her about you being at Cornell, etc. She's not going with anybody special right now and said that if you called her, she'd know about you, etc. As I told you, she has a car, so maybe you can just call her at first and see if you can get a ride home with her back home if you don't want to actually ask her out on a date. Elsie said she's very nice. She's a sophomore, she's 5'3", and lives at 310 University Avenue in an apartment with some other girls. Her name is, it'll protect her privacy, her name is blank Blankberg, and she's from Guilderland. Her phone number is 273-9177. Linda called yesterday and she's fine. She's having a small problem with her Spanish professor and she doesn't feel he's giving her the grade she deserves. That happens to all of us all the time. That's it for now. We'll call you on Sunday morning sometime, save you some money. Love, Mom. P.S. Call the girl because she's expecting it. Finally, my mother and father were blessed with 10 adoring grandchildren. Who will soon carry their grandmother to join her beloved Hesh this morning. She and they are also lucky to have had so much time together. But somewhere in Peppy's fanatic fantasy world, she would just have loved having the 9 starting 5 of the New York Mets all in uniform to serve as her pallbearers so that they could gently let her down just one more time.
Well, I'm the only daughter of the only daughter of an only daughter. Names. Names were given, names we've earned. Our mom was named Helene Pearl at birth by her parents, and shortly thereafter, Peppy, by a cousin who was taken by how busy a baby she was. Our mom was a long hoped-for daughter after 4 sons. Our grandmother named her after her own mother, Chaya Pearl. Chaya denotes life, vitality. Our mom knew how to enjoy life thoroughly. She was always up for an adventure. She traveled to exotic locales with her beloved Hesh, never shying away from a bit of discomfort in pursuit of the exciting experience. We learned that if we discussed the planning of a trip in her presence, she would let us know she was up for tagging along, as Clara knows on the Colorado River trip, as we knew on our Italy and Scotland trips. Mommy was an original, not a cliche. The caricature of the Jewish mother was quite foreign to her kids. She wasn't superstitious, never complained of aches and pains. She didn't use guilt as a weapon, and she never hovered. Rather, she encouraged independence. She valued education, but didn't hesitate to pull us out of school to attend a ball game or go on a trip. As her only daughter, we didn't spend time together in malls, nor in beauty parlors, having mani-pedis. Our shopping trips were our annual Passover outings. Store to snag all the critical fixings for the holiday. including those awful jellied fruit slices that she remembered so fondly from her childhood. Mommy's seders were a marvel, executed precisely with great pride. She kept her receipts from year to year and was delighted when I transcribed the daily tasks that she kept in her head, allowing us to actually check off each one with great satisfaction. She used her own mother's china and supplemented with hers. Paper plates and plasticware were anathema. As our cousins, who, bless them, many of them are here, can attest, the courses were ladled into bowls and spooned out onto platters, then marched out with impressive efficiency. Mommy, David, occasionally Clara, and I would stay up to all hours, drying dishes and counting silverware. She didn't really trust all of you people. Ending the night with a toast of sabra or cherry herring to the next year. Mommy divided her year into 2 seasons, Passover and baseball. Anytime from mid-April to late September into October, if the Mets actually made the playoffs, we knew, and the grandchildren learned, that we could call Mommy late into the night. If the line were busy, it was because she was on the phone with her brother Milt or one of her sons, rehashing the game. She taught by example, not by lectures. She taught us how to be a devoted parent, to raise loving children. She was active in the community, and she in turn was very proud when each of us followed suit. She's the mother of 2 synagogue presidents, the mother-in-law of a synagogue president, and the grandmother of a synagogue president. We learned values and to recognize blessings, as she and Daddy often remarked how very blessed they felt. Chaya Perel, Mommy, was a devoted daughter, a loyal sister, beloved aunt, cherished mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Tehei nishmata tzrura b'tzrura chayim. She was full of life, Peppy. May her soul be bound up in the bonds of life always.
Thank you all for being here with us today. It's very important to our family and to Peppy as well. Peppy, how does a name so aptly describe a person? How lucky for someone to introduce themselves with that adjective and for people to immediately understand that this is truly who my mother was. I would also like to add 2 other appropriate words to describe Peppy. That is pride and passion. Her pride in being one of the first women to have an adult bat mitzvah, and in serving on this temple's board as secretary. Quick anecdote. What does a secretary do? An inquisitive 9-year-old asked when his mom came home from her meeting. She responded, I take the minutes. I thought, big deal, just write down 30 or 40 and your job is done. In addition to her long life commitment to her temple, Mom's dedication to the Hebrew Academy, the State of Israel, and Jewish Federation defined this pride and inspired all of her children to serve our community in various ways. Both of my trips to Israel were with my parents, and the second trip was especially meaningful for them as they shared their experience with our children. Another example of this pride as a Jew was instilled in me when she led me into Principal Bach's Albany High office, and she demanded to know why her child was not allowed to take a chemistry makeup quiz due to my absence on the second day of Pesach, and being told by the teacher, quote, this is not Israel. I swear that makeup was more difficult than the original quiz. Finally, I saw firsthand for over 25 years the pride that my mother had in her husband and son's business. Many of you may not know that Pep took care of our father's business, stayed up countless nights worrying about making payroll, and made sure that Hesh didn't have to worry about both our household and his business. She loved working with the two of us, and we were both so lucky to have her dedication and business sense. Pretty impressive for someone who never took a business or accounting course. Pep's passion was exemplified by her love of her beloved Brooklyn Dodgers and New York Mets, from her first game with her cousins at Ebbets Field, where she witnessed a no-hitter, to countless phone calls with her brother Milt and her children and grandchildren following victories and heartbreaking defeats, to being with her two boys at the final game of the '69 series, and later at the playoff game celebration after Mets walk-off homer, where she kissed a total stranger sitting right next to us out of sheer joy. I never told Hesh that one. Her passion for baseball followed her to afternoon games on the radio at our office, when all of a sudden I would hear her scream, "God damn it!" and have to remind her that we are a professional office and her coworkers do not need to know that Benitez blew another save and her beloved team lost a heartbreaker. Our mother's pride and passion defined who Peppy was and who we will forever remember in our hearts. We love you. Thank you.
From one generation to the next, I'm going to invite two of Peppy's grandchildren to share a few of their thoughts and reflections. I'm going to call upon Rosara first, and then Gary.
Hello. I don't know how many of you can actually see me, but I've been very fortunate to have Peppy as my grandmother. When I visited her a few weeks ago at her place in Loudonville, I decided to go home and look through old voicemails. For years, no one's been able to leave voicemails on my phone because I don't know how to take them off and put them in a safe place. And I have some from, friends, family, grandparents. And I scrolled through and found two from Peppy from years ago, 2013 and 2011, I think. And the first one was a birthday message. The second one was praising me on my college essay. And in both messages, she signs off with, "You don't have to worry about giving me a call back." And it struck me. And I spoke to my brother Jacob when we were talking about Peppy and how she was doing and everything. And he said he would listen to some messages as well. And they ended the same way. And I've been trying to find meaning in that. And I think what I'd like to derive from that is that she wanted us to keep moving forward. She wanted us to live our lives in the present tense and to be on to the next. She didn't want us to live in the past. And that's exemplary of how she lived her life, always going to some exotic country, some new adventure, and it truly influenced the way her children grew up, and in turn, how her grandchildren grew up. My dad brings up a trip to Haiti that they took, and he was saying how his peers would go to Disneyland and Cabo, and they went to Haiti because it was important to see how other people lived and to have these experiences. And I know that one of the reasons I felt comfortable studying abroad for 3 years in England, while it's not the most exotic place, was because this love and comfort of travel was instilled in us through my father as a result of his mother and parents. I deeply regret that Peppy won't be around for my daughter. But my Aunt Clara sent us a Google Photos drive of thousands of photos that she thankfully has taken over the years. And you can see the joy, the pure joy and vibrance in Peppy's face when she's with her great-grandchildren, especially. You know, she had that look of joy all the time, but it was with her great-grandchildren really in the pictures that it stood out to me. And although she won't be here for our daughter, who's coming any day, hopefully, I know that she lives in all of us, and she'll be a Sanders, and we're all here to bring Peppy to her and to all future generations. So thank you very much for all being here today. She loves all of us. May her memory be a blessing.
I'm only slightly taller. I'm Peppy, the license plate that inspired curiosity and joy in the hearts of everyone who saw it, and probably a little bit of fear for those of us who knew what type of driver Grandma was, especially when running late for a Mets game. While I'm Peppy was certainly accurate, I'm foundational would have been just as true, at least for Peppy Sanders' grandchildren. When each of us thought back to foundational memories, experiences from our childhoods that helped shape us into the people we are today, we noted that one recurring theme was Grandma being a major part of those memories. Our various holidays that included Grandma frying up latkes, or processing maror while wearing lab goggles, or pushing her favorite chocolate crinkle cookies, or pleading with us to at least try the salmon loaf. Our early fishing adventures always ended with Grandma greeting us in one of her iconic nightgowns, ready to cook up whatever the great sportsman Hesh Sanders had brought home to feed the family. Our appreciation of her strength, confidence, and straightforwardness, and her example that one doesn't need a loud voice to command attention and respect. Her refusal to take crap from anyone, and her ability to bring order to a family full of big personalities had a tremendous impact. Our learning the meaning of acceptance because of Grandma's unwavering love for us, regardless of how difficult we could be as children or who we fell in love with as adults. Our Mets adventures to Shea Stadium that included Grandma diligently filling out the scorecard so future historians could know how the Amazons did during any particular game. And of course, our watching the Mets from the couch with Grandma, which always led to us learning fun new words and experiencing sore arms from the exuberant celebrations or lamentations. Our close connections as a family and to our traditions, all of which can be directly linked back to Grandma and her steadfast, quiet, food-based leadership. We have all been fortunate to have such an amazing person as our Grandma, and for her to be so foundational in each of our lives. Our Grandma helped make us into the people we are today, and we all hope we can live up to the remarkable example she set for us. On behalf of Peppy Sanders' 10 grandchildren, plus the favorites who married into this special family, and Peppy's 6 great-grandchildren, thank you for joining us to celebrate the incredible and truly impactful life she led. Thank you.
Chavirim, I want to share a brief reflection or two with you, starting in this week's Torah portion. And most of us, when we think about the opening chapters of the book of Exodus, the images that often come to mind are the image of the burning bush, that towering encounter of Moses with God, Moses' first encounter with Pharaoh, the descent into servitude and the suffering of the Israelites. But if we think only of that, then we have missed what I think is one of the most powerful pieces of our Torah portion, and one which I think in many ways brings us to Peppy. Our Torah portion presents us with not one, but 6 incredibly powerful and remarkable women. At the very beginning, we're introduced to a pair of midwives, Shifra and Puah, who, when ordered by Pharaoh to engage an immoral and heinous activity, embrace their understanding of the godly and reject outright Pharaoh's decree. These 2 women, identified sometimes as Yocheved and Miriam, but as often as not, just 2 anonymous women who were willing to give comfort to the oppressed, to the strangers in their midst, to welcome children into the world, and to be beacons of hope and of goodness. We turn the page, and we meet at first an anonymous woman who later we discover is Yocheved, who has a beautiful child and the courage to hide him for 3 months in the face of Pharaoh's decree. And then, in a remarkable act of faith and of trust, she builds a small ark and floats her child down the Nile River with the trust that there is goodness in the world that will save the young child. Watching over the small basket is Miriam. The woman we discover is Moshe's sister, and a woman who routinely takes matters into her own hands. In a remarkable piece of midrash, they have Miriam's father, a leader amongst the Israelites, convincing all the men of his generation to divorce their wives so as to not have more children, so as to not provide more victims for Pharaoh. And into the mouth of Miriam, they put the chastisement, suggesting that her father, Amram, was even worse than Pharaoh, and convinces him that, in fact, to defy Pharaoh means to go on, to build families, to build future. Not enough. Miriam is audacious in running up to the Pharaoh's daughter who has just found this child floating in a basket and suggesting, "Let me find you someone to nurse him for you," and brings forth the child's mother. Skip forward a few years, and Miriam is leading the women in song at the Sea of Reeds in celebration and in joy. The aforementioned Pharaoh's daughter, a nameless princess in the story who dares to rescue and raise a Hebrew slave child. She rejects the highly autocratic and hierarchical society with all of its gross inequities, and boldly includes 2 slave women into her secret endeavor. Somehow, she is able to develop a story to convince Pharaoh and his court that spares Moshe. and in the Midrash is given the name Batya, daughter of God. And before the Parsha is over, we're introduced to Tzipporah, a woman who tended and protected her father's flocks with her sisters, who would later display a boldness in protecting her husband Moshe and her infant son. She was courageous and willing to leave her home and her family to become a stranger in a foreign land, to join a people who at that point were enslaved and impoverished. This week, we read the story of 6 powerful women. 6 women who found the best of themselves and impacted the world around them. But like the Piyut Kihine Kachomer, which has 7 stanzas, this week we reflect about 7 women, adding Peppy's remarkable life, the incredible impact that she had on generations of her family. There's a quote that has various versions. I share the one version that is attributed to Jonas Salk that says, "Good parents can give their children 2 things, roots and wings." And Peppy truly accomplished that. She rooted each of her children in the fertile soil of our tradition and of her family. She created a home that was a haven from which all of you could go forth and soar. She gave you the model and the paradigm of exploring the world, of discovering the best in the world around us, and through that, discovering the best of yourselves. And it was that similar gift that became the legacy that she gave to her grandchildren and touched the generation of her great-grandchildren. There are those who, when they die, leave behind an inheritance which can quickly dissipate. But there are those who leave a heritage, an example of a life filled with good deeds, of cheerful countenance, of a brilliant and embracing smile, of love for family, of devotion to Judaism, and a good name, all of which endure forever. The poet John Greenleaf Whittier wrote, "We shape ourselves, the joy or fear of which our coming life is made, and fill our future atmosphere with sunshine and with shade. The tissue of the life to be we weave with colors all our own, and in the field of destiny we reap as we have sown." Peppy planted a legacy in the hearts and souls of her family. And we see what she reaps in the incredible words that were shared in tribute to her. And now we can take some measure of comfort that Peppy will continue to argue baseball with her brothers, be embraced by the generations of her family past that come to greet her, and we can all take comfort in knowing that Peppy will still be smiling down upon us, knowing that each of you carry on her legacy from generation to generation. Amen. Chaverim, I'm going to ask you to please rise. We'll continue with El Mali Rachamim, and we'll be led in it by Rabbi Ornstein.
ברחמים, שוכן במרומים. אמצי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת חיה פרל בת גדליה ושרה שהלכה לעולמה, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בתור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Chaya Perel, the daughter of Gedalia and Sarah, Peppy Sanders, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May she rest in peace. And we all say,
I'm going to invite those who have been designated to serve as pallbearers to please come forward. As Peppy departs our sanctuary, she'll be accompanied by something truly unique to the moment and completely appropriate to her.